My purpose, my modest purpose, is to show how especially the thought of our present Pope, our philosopher Pope Benedict XVI, how his defense of a true science of theology applies to the United States of America. That defense is finally of the reasonableness of belief in a God who is rational, creative, and erotic. The modern world is characterized by de-Christianization and de-Hellenization. There are conscious attempts to make us less Christian and less Greek. But the modern world is not fundamentally anti-Christian or anti-Greek. We speak more of the dignity of the human person, of the unique irreplaceability of each one of us than we ever have before. So modern de-Hellenization or modern de-Greekification or something has largely been animated by the desire to free the willful God and the willful person made in his image from being distorted or annihilated in the impersonal metaphysical system of Aristotle or some other philosopher or scientist. Modern de-Christianization has largely been animated by the desire to free science from all anthropomorphic or personal distortion in order to fuel real progress, change we can believe in, toward a certain understanding of a genuinely universal structure of reality. Modern science hopes to perfect and so achieve the goal first articulated quite imperfectly by the classical Greek philosophers. So de-Christianization has been pursued on behalf of impersonal science, and de-Hellenization has been pursued on behalf of the free person. We don't really believe anymore we can reason about the true situation of the only being in the world, the human person, who is open to the truth about nature. So we think we can know everything but the being that knows. So we often either deny that being exists or say that that being is just free, detached from science, detached from reason. So consider this. Virtually all sophisticated Americans claim to believe that Darwin teaches the whole truth about who we are. Now, for Darwin, the individual human being exists only to serve the species. Even our super smart species has no enduring significance in the accidental evolutionary process. So at the end of the day, no matter how fancy these guys get, the truth is that I'm nothing but species fodder, and that what I in particular do has less than negligible significance for our species' future. But those same sophisticated Americans, and so not you or me, those same sophisticated Americans who pride themselves on being whole hog Darwinians, speak incessantly about the freedom and dignity of the individual and are proud of their freedom to choose. They think they have more freedom to choose than people ever have. Even our neo-Darwinian scientists with brains, or about half of them, such as Daniel Dennett, they know there's no foundation for the idea of human dignity in what we know through science, but they admit it would be a disaster if we ever actually stopped believing that. So Dennett says, let's embrace dignity as a useful fiction that allows us to flourish. So can Darwin explain why healthy members of a species enjoying the most favorable of environments would suddenly and quite consciously just decide to stop reproducing? There seems to be a law here. It seems that members of a species smart enough and curious enough to have discovered the theory of natural selection can't help but act to make that theory untrue. So if I were a Darwinian, I would say the theory of natural selection was true until some species accidentally got smart enough to discover it, then it stops being true. but I'm not a Darwinian. So our Pope, to free us from the illusion that we know how to think reasonably these days, takes us back to the first word about the relationship between Greek philosophy or science and Christianity, the word spoken during the period of Hellenic Christianity. Back in those days, the Greeks and the Christians agreed on plenty. They agreed that we're hardwired. They didn't say hardwired, but nonetheless, they agreed we're hardwired as beings with minds to think about who or what God must be, and that we're animated by eros or love to seek the truth about God. Both in the Greeks and the Christians contributed to genuine enlightenment, to the liberation of human beings from the confines of obviously untrue civil theology, from a world where the Word of God was both used as a weapon and justified the use of weapons. But there are differences. Through reflection, Aristotle attempted to grasp God as the object of every human desire or love. Aristotle understood God only as the object of love, as a wholly self-sufficient or unerotic or unmovable being, not a person at all. The Christians respond that human longings and human action exhibit undeniable evidence of personal freedom, and that the person must have some actual foundation in being itself. What we do know, they say, points in the direction of a creative activity of a personal God. So the real existence of the whole philosopher or the whole physicist can't be accounted for by any mathematical physics or any necessitarian physics. So the Christian says, according to what you can see with your own eyes, the world finally is more about love than mathematics, and the particular human person is more significant and more wonderful than the stars. In the late medieval times, there were the nominalists, and here's what their opinion was. Words, logos, words do not give us any access to the truth about being. Words are names, nothing more. Our speech doesn't give us any access to the way God or nature is. The Word of God is pure will, and the Word of man, who is made in God's image, is pure will. So words for us are merely weapons, because we're not hardwired to discover the truth about God, nature, or each other through reason. For Locke, we experience ourselves as free individuals or persons, but there is no divine or natural support for our personhood or individuality. Nature is utterly indifferent to my personal existence. Aristotle's right about that, but I can do something about that. I have to, in my freedom, establish my personal significance in opposition to that indifference. From nature's view, I'm worthless, but from my view as a free individual, nature is worthless. But as a free individual, I'm all about, to use the same lame joke, change I can believe in. So the detachment of the person from nature or from logos in the name of freedom and in the name of science allows us to experience ourselves as pure freedom, that is, pure selfishness. According to Locke, there's no evidence for the existence of an active or giving creator. No evidence at all that God or nature provides for the person in any way. Our personal freedom, like God's, is utterly mysterious. There's no evident natural divine foundation for me, my very being. So I have to work to establish my freedom, expand it. I have to create myself, to constitute myself out of nothing. So the point of Locke was to construct the individual and to change the world to make the individual more and more real. Because the more we act as individuals, the more free and secure we are. I'm not endorsing this, but nonetheless. Okay. So if you think about it, it's a baby step from Locke to Marx, conceptually. So libertarians these days say there's some bad stuff about Marx, like history, revolution, crazy stuff like that. But Marx's description of the end of history is exactly the point of the modern world. We want to create a world where you're totally on your own, totally unobsessed. I mean, the obvious way of explaining this is, why did Marx call communism communism?